Have you ever wondered why some women naturally attract respect, admiration, and deep love, while others constantly struggle in their relationships? What do the former have that makes them so magnetic, so respected by the men around them? The answer is deeper than you might imagine, and Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists of all time, left us the keys to understanding it. Today we're going to explore why men deeply respect women who love themselves. We're not talking about narcissism or selfishness, but something much more powerful: authenticity and true self-love. Think about this. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself if you're living the life you truly want? Not the one others expect from you, not the one that seems right to others, but the one that truly resonates with your soul. Jung discovered something fascinating. When a woman decides to love and choose herself, something radically changes in how others perceive her, especially men. Today's world is designed to distract you, to keep you trapped in routines, expectations, and endless commitments that seem inevitable. But here's the truth that few dare to face. Each time you choose others over yourself, you're telling your inner being that it's not important enough. And curiously, you're also sending that same message to the men around you. Jung explained that our connection with the unconscious isn't optional. It's an essential part of who we are. However, many women ignore its signals because facing them can be uncomfortable. That feeling of discomfort you experience when something isn't right in your life or relationships isn't a coincidence. It's your soul speaking to you, showing you that there's something you need to change. Now think about the decisions you've made lately in your relationships. How many of them truly came from a place of authenticity and self-love? And how many were driven by fear, by the need to keep someone, by not wanting to be alone, or simply by the desire to please? Jung invites us to reflect on this because he knows that relationships that don't come from your inner truth only create more chaos and disconnection in your life. The fascinating thing is that men can perceive this difference instantly. Although they may not be able to articulate it, there's something in the energy of a woman who loves herself that awakens a deep respect in them. And this goes far beyond physical appearance. Jung developed the concept of anima and animus, the feminine and masculine parts we all carry within. When a woman is in harmony with her anima, when she respects her own desires and needs, she unconsciously activates the positive animus in men, that part of them that seeks to protect, respect, and value what's authentic. It's as if an unconscious switch is activated that says, "This woman values herself, therefore she is valuable and deserves my best version." On the contrary, when a woman constantly sacrifices herself, ignores her needs, or devalues herself to maintain a relationship, she sends a very different signal. The man may stay, but deep respect will never fully flourish. Jung would explain this as an unconscious projection. If you don't respect yourself, you're unconsciously communicating that there's nothing to respect. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others or abandoning your relationships. It's not about living in a state of selfishness, but recognizing that to give your best in a relationship, you first need to be at peace with yourself. This is the fundamental principle of self-love, a concept that Jung explored deeply. Self-love isn't a luxury or an excuse to avoid commitments. It's the foundation from which all meaningful relationships, especially romantic ones, can flourish. And here comes the most interesting part. When a woman chooses to prioritize herself, something changes deeply in her energy and how men perceive her. She begins to attract people and relationships that are aligned with her essence. It's as if the universe responds to her decision to live in truth, eliminating everything that doesn't serve her and bringing what she truly needs to grow. Men feel this. They respond to it. They respect it deeply. But to get there, you must first confront your shadows, those parts of yourself you've ignored, repressed, or feared. Jung spoke of the shadow as that aspect of our psyche that contains everything we prefer not to see about ourselves. In the context of relationships, your shadow might include your fear of being alone, your tendency to please at the cost of your well-being, or even your patterns of attracting relationships that don't value you. And although it may be uncomfortable to face these parts of yourself, it's in that confrontation where change really begins. Because when you integrate your shadows, when you stop fighting them and learn to accept them, you discover an inner power you never imagined you had. And that power is precisely what men most respect in a woman. I remember Elena's case, one of my followers who shared her story with me. For years, Elena had been in relationships where she constantly felt undervalued. She was always doing more, giving more, sacrificing more, just to keep her partner interested. The relationships worked for a while, but inevitably ended with her feeling exhausted and resentful. One day, after another painful breakup, Elena decided to take some time for herself. She began working on her relationship with herself, establishing healthy boundaries, rediscovering her forgotten passions. She wasn't looking for a relationship, she was looking to reconnect with her essence. 6 months later, she met David, and something extraordinary happened. Unlike her previous relationships, this one developed with a mutual respect she had never experienced before. David valued her boundaries, admired her independence, and, most surprisingly for Elena, seemed to respect her more when she remained true to herself, even when that meant saying no to him. What Elena discovered, and what Jung would masterfully explain, is that men naturally respect a woman who respects herself. It's not a strategy or a trick. It's a deep psychological law. This process of integration and self-knowledge doesn't happen overnight. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering will to know yourself. But what you gain in return is invaluable. You gain clarity, purpose, and an inner peace that no one can take away from you. You gain the ability to say no when something doesn't resonate with you, without fear of losing someone. And above all, you gain the freedom to be who you really are. And that freedom, that authenticity, is what attracts the deep respect of a man worth having in your life. Perhaps you're wondering how to start this journey towards self-love that generates so much respect. The answer is simpler than it seems. Start by listening to yourself. Every time you feel discomfort in your relationship, a doubt, or even an intense emotion, stop and ask yourself what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Because, as Jung said, all the answers you seek outside are already within you. You just need the courage to listen to them and act accordingly. One of the hardest things we do in life is listen to our intuition, especially when it takes us in a direction that challenges what we've built. Maybe it's a relationship you know no longer works, a pattern of attracting the wrong type of men, or even the way you allow yourself to be treated for fear of being alone. Jung reminds us that ignoring these signals isn't an act of strength, but a denial of our true essence. Choosing yourself means having the courage to let go of what no longer resonates with you. Even in your romantic relationships, this isn't always easy. Often, we cling to relationships that no longer nurture us because change scares us. We convince ourselves that a mediocre relationship is better than no relationship at all. But Jung challenges us to see change as a door, not an end. A door to a more authentic version of ourselves, and by extension, to more authentic and respectful relationships. Think about it. What are you holding on to in your love life that no longer serves you? What relationships, beliefs, or habits have you maintained out of fear of letting them go? Perhaps you feel that letting go of certain people would be a loss, but the real loss occurs when you sacrifice your inner peace and self-love to maintain something that no longer makes sense. Choosing yourself isn't selfishness. It's an act of love and respect for who you are. And here's the most beautiful paradox. When you finally choose yourself, when you decide that your well-being is a priority, you not only gain respect from men, but you also attract a completely different type of partner. You attract men who are looking for an authentic connection, not someone they can control or take advantage of. Jung would explain this through the concept of projection and shadow. When you don't love yourself, you unconsciously project that lack of love into your relationships, attracting people who reflect that same lack. But when you begin to love yourself, to honor yourself, and to respect your own boundaries, those projections change. You begin to attract people who reflect that self-love back to you. When you finally choose yourself, something magical happens in your relationships. You begin to see clearly what was previously clouded. Men who truly value and respect you stay, while those who are just looking for someone they could manipulate or control disappear. This isn't a coincidence. It's the reflection of an internal change. Jung called it synchronicity, that connection between your inner and outer world that aligns everything when you decide to live in coherence with your truth. But this process also requires you to be honest with yourself. Sometimes choosing yourself means admitting that you've made decisions in your relationships that don't reflect who you really are. Perhaps you've allowed certain men to cross your boundaries, or you've said yes to things you knew you should reject. This isn't a reason to judge yourself, but an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to choose again. Jung believed that authenticity isn't a state you achieve once and for all. It's an ongoing journey, a process of learning and growth. And on that path, especially in the realm of romantic relationships, you'll face resistance. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you'll be tempted to return to old patterns just because they're comfortable or because you fear losing someone. But in those moments, remember that true growth and truly respectful relationships happen outside your comfort zone. Men worth having in your life aren't attracted to your insecurity or your willingness to please them at all costs. They're attracted to your authenticity, to your ability to remain true to yourself even when it's difficult. Jung would explain this by saying that emotionally mature men seek in their partners a reflection of their own wholeness, not someone who simply reinforces their insecurities or feeds their ego. The world won't always understand your decision to choose yourself. There will be those who criticize you, who question why you're no longer as accommodating, or why you now establish firm boundaries. Even some men will walk away because you no longer fit their expectations of what a woman should be. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. Because when you choose yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You understand that your worth doesn't depend on what men think of you, but on what you think of yourself. This doesn't mean you should live isolated or disconnected from romantic relationships. On the contrary, when you choose yourself, your relationships transform. You no longer look for someone to complete you or fill your voids, but for someone with whom you can share your wholeness. You no longer settle for superficial or unbalanced relationships, but seek bonds that nourish your soul. And in the process, you discover that the right men will always stand by your side, not because they need you, but because they value you as you are. When you start living from this authenticity, from this unwavering self-love, the world around you changes, especially your romantic world. This isn't magic or a trick. It's the deep connection between your inner and outer worlds that Jung described so eloquently. He spoke of how our psyche projects externally everything we carry within. If you live in conflict with yourself, you'll attract conflictive relationships. If you reject yourself, you'll attract rejection. But if you choose yourself, if you accept yourself as you are, you'll begin to notice how men around you treat you with a new level of respect and consideration. This transformation doesn't happen immediately. It's a process, and like any process, it requires patience and commitment. There will be days when you'll feel like you're going backward, moments when your old relationship habits will try to return. But here lies the true test, in your ability to remain firm in your decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you fear losing someone you care about. Choosing yourself won't always be understood by men who have been accustomed to women who put others' needs above their own. We live in a world that values female sacrifice, giving everything for others, even at the cost of our well-being. But Jung taught us that we can't give what we don't have. If you sacrifice your happiness, your energy, or your inner peace to please a man, what you're offering isn't authentic love, and sooner or later, that imbalance will manifest as resentment, frustration, or emotional exhaustion. Think about your current relationships with the men in your life. How many of them make you feel inspired, motivated, and at peace? And how many leave you exhausted, confused, or even empty? Jung invites us to reflect on this because Our relationships aren't simply social connections, but mirrors of our inner state. The men you choose to have around reflect the beliefs and values you carry within. If you allow someone to cross your boundaries again and again, it's not because that man is bad, but because there's a part of you that still hasn't learned to protect itself, to love itself enough. Protecting your energy in relationships isn't a selfish act. It's an act of self-love. Jung believed that the unconscious is always working to guide us toward our well-being, but we often ignore its signals. That feeling of exhaustion you experience after interacting with certain men isn't a coincidence. It's your unconscious telling you that relationship isn't aligned with your essence. And if you decide to ignore that signal, the cost will always be your inner peace and, over time, your self-esteem. Choosing yourself involves establishing clear boundaries in your romantic relationships. And boundaries aren't walls to keep men out, but bridges that allow for more authentic and healthy relationships. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your truth, to your dreams, and to your well-being. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with all the men in your life, but that you need to be honest with yourself about which relationships nurture you and which drain you. As you begin to live from this authenticity, from this unwavering self-love, something wonderful happens in your relationships with men. Your intuition about them becomes stronger. That inner voice that previously seemed weak or confused when it came to choosing partners begins to guide you with more clarity. You start to quickly recognize men who will respect and value you, and to identify warning signs in those who are just looking to take advantage of your kindness. Intuition, as Jung explained, is one of the purest forms of connection with the unconscious. It's that feeling you have when a man feels right or doesn't feel right for you. But to hear it, you need to silence the external noise. This means stopping the search for others' approval, disconnecting from social expectations about how you should relate to men, and learning to trust yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else can know what's best for you in your relationships. When you decide to choose yourself, you're sending a clear message to the universe and to the men around you. I'm ready to live from my truth, to love from fullness and not from lack. And the universe responds. You begin to attract men, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with who you really are. This doesn't mean all your future relationships will be perfect or that you won't face challenges, but those challenges will no longer feel like a constant struggle to be valued. Instead, there'll be opportunities to grow and strengthen yourself alongside people who deeply respect you. By deciding to live from your authenticity, you also begin to experience what Carl Jung described as synchronicity in your relationships. These seemingly casual encounters with men who respect and value you aren't accidental. They're a manifestation of your internal alignment. When you choose yourself and decide to honor your truth, the universe seems to conspire in your favor. The right relationships arrive, the appropriate men appear, and everything begins to flow in a way that previously seemed unattainable. But this doesn't mean the path to relationships based on mutual respect is free from obstacles. In fact, often, the greatest challenges arise just when you decide to choose yourself. It's as if your relationships, accustomed to the compliant version of you, tried to test your commitment to this new path. Here lies your power. Because each time you reaffirm your decision, each time you choose your well-being over pleasing someone else, you're strengthening that connection with your true self and teaching the men in your life how to treat you. The key is to stay firm, even when doubts appear. It's normal to feel fear when establishing clearer boundaries with men you've allowed to treat you in a certain way for a long time. But remember this: each time you choose to stay in a relationship that doesn't fully respect you, you're closing the door to the possibility of finding one that does. Jung taught us that change doesn't occur without resistance, but that resistance isn't a sign that you're wrong, but that you're moving forward. One of the most powerful ways to overcome that resistance is to reflect on what you truly value in your relationships. What kind of treatment do you expect from a man? What kind of dynamic do you want to build? When you have clarity in your relational values and goals, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with them. And in doing so, you begin to attract men who share that same vision of mutual respect. It's important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. Although choosing yourself may seem like a solitary act at first, especially if it involves distancing yourself from relationships that don't value you, you're actually building a path that will attract the right men, those who respect you, who celebrate you, and who are willing to build a balanced and nurturing relationship with you. These men don't need you to change to fit into their lives. They accept you as you are because they've also done their own inner work. When you reach this point, something within you changes forever in how you relate to men. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, to conquer, or to retain someone at all costs. Decisions that previously seemed impossible, like leaving a relationship that doesn't respect you or establishing a firm boundary, are now made with clarity and confidence. And most importantly, you find a sense of peace in your relationships that doesn't depend on whether you have a partner or not. Because, as Jung taught us, true peace in relationships can only come from within. That inner peace is the result of honoring your needs, respecting your own boundaries, and living in coherence with your values in all your relationships. But it's also a gift you can share with the world. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire other women to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon for those who are looking for their own path toward more respectful relationships. And in this process, you not only transform your love life, but you also impact those around you in a profound and meaningful way. Think for a moment about what your life would be like if you could let go of all the relationships that don't fully respect you. How would you feel if you set aside the dynamics that drain your energy, the commitments that don't resonate with you, and the romantic expectations you never wanted to fulfill? Imagine the freedom, the lightness, and the clarity you could experience in your relationships with men. This isn't an unattainable dream. It's a real possibility that's within your reach if you decide to choose yourself. When you make this decision, you begin to realize that you're not losing anything by letting go of relationships that don't respect you. Instead, you're gaining space for connections that really matter. You're creating a love life that not only makes sense, but also fills you with purpose and joy. This is the gift that Jung wanted all women to discover, that the true transformation in our relationships begins when we stop looking for in men what has always been within ourselves. When you choose to live from your authenticity, from that place of unwavering self-love, something extraordinary happens in how you relate to men. You begin to feel truly valued. You're no longer trapped in others' expectations or in the demands of a society that constantly tells you who you should be in your relationships. Instead, you begin to listen to that inner voice that has always been there, whispering to you that you deserve respectful, nurturing, and balanced love. That feeling of freedom in your relationships is priceless. It's as if a heavy burden lifted from your shoulders, allowing you to breathe deeply in the presence of men for the first time in a long time. However, achieving this freedom requires courage. It requires you to face not only external expectations, but also your own fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs about what you deserve in love. Jung reminded us that the greatest enemy isn't outside of us, but within. It's that inner voice that says, "What if I don't find anyone better? What if I end up alone? What if I'm not enough to be fully loved?" But here's the secret. That voice isn't your truth. It's just an echo of past experiences, of the conditioning you've accumulated throughout your life about how your relationships with men should be. Each time you choose to confront it, each time you choose to act from your authenticity despite fear, you're dismantling those limiting beliefs and creating space for a new type of relationship. This is the true power of choosing yourself. You free yourself from the invisible chains that have kept you in relationships that don't fully honor you. As you progress on this path, you begin to notice something curious in your interactions with men. Things that previously seemed crucial in a relationship, like ensuring you're always pleasing or fearing to express your needs, begin to lose their power over you. You no longer feel the need to change who you are to be loved, to prove your worth, or to sacrifice your well-being to keep someone by your side. Instead, You discover a deep satisfaction in simply being yourself in your relationships. And it's in this state of authenticity where you find the respect you've always deserved. This respect isn't about men putting you on a pedestal or treating you as someone fragile who needs protection. It's a deep respect based on admiration for your wholeness, for your ability to remain true to yourself, for your courage to establish clear boundaries, and for your willingness to love from fullness and not from lack. It's a respect that manifests in how they listen to you, how they value your opinions, and how they honor your needs without feeling threatened by them. The beauty of this process is that it not only transforms your romantic relationships, but all your relationships with men, whether friends, colleagues, or family members. When you choose yourself, you become a living example of what it means to be an authentic and self-confident woman. You inspire men to question their own beliefs about how to relate to women, to challenge their communication patterns, and to choose more balanced and respectful relationships. You don't need to preach or convince. Simply by being yourself, you're making a difference in how men perceive and treat women. This is something that Carl Jung understood deeply in his work with female patients. He knew that individual change has a chain effect, that each time a woman chooses herself and sets high standards for how she allows herself to be treated, she's contributing to a collective change in the dynamic between men and women. Because when we live from our authenticity, our relationships, communities, and even the entire world transform. But make no mistake, this journey toward more respectful relationships isn't linear. There will be days when you'll feel strong and secure in your value, and others when you'll doubt whether you're asking too much or if you really deserve that deep respect. Those moments of doubt are part of the process, and Jung saw them as opportunities to deepen your connection with yourself. Each challenge, each doubt, is an invitation to reaffirm your commitment to your own well-being. The important thing is to remember that you're not alone. Although the journey toward more respectful relationships may seem solitary at first, you'll always find people and resources that support you along the way. Perhaps it's a book, a friend who has traveled a similar path, or even a video like this one that reaches you at the exact moment you need it. These aren't coincidences. They're signs that you're on the right path. When you look back at all the relationships you've had, at all the patterns you've overcome, you realize that each experience, even the painful ones, has brought you to this moment of clarity. And although the future may seem uncertain, there's one thing that will always be true. As long as you continue to choose yourself, you'll be building loving relationships that are truly worth living. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to be yourself in your relationships with men. Not the version of you they expect, nor the one you've created to please or retain someone, but your purest essence, the one that exists when no one is looking. Carl Jung showed us that the true work of life isn't in seeking outside the respect and love we deserve, but in cultivating it first within ourselves. And when you finally choose yourself, you realize that the respect you've been seeking in men always begins with yourself. This is a call to action for you who are listening to me now. Your love life is too valuable to live trapped in relationships that don't fully respect you, to ignore your own needs and dreams in the name of love. Today is the day to take the first step, to face your shadows, listen to your intuition, and reconnect with your true self. Because when you choose yourself, you not only transform your relationship with yourself, but also the way men see and treat you. What now? This is the moment to reflect on what you've heard. Ask yourself, which aspects of my relationships with men are truly aligned with my value? What patterns can I release to attract more respectful relationships? Where have I allowed my boundaries to be crossed? Remember that every small step towards self-love counts, and you're not alone on this journey. This space, this channel, is here to remind you of your inherent value and to guide you on your path toward relationships that fully honor you. If this message resonated with you, make its impact go further. Share this video with a friend who is struggling in her relationships, someone who needs to remember her value, or who is allowing less than she deserves. Every interaction, every comment, every like helps this message reach more women who need to hear it. Imagine the collective change we could generate, a community of women who choose themselves and who, As a result, transform how men perceive and respect them. Leave me your opinion in the comments. Tell me which part of this message touched your heart, or how you plan to begin choosing yourself in your relationships from now on. Have you noticed how men's respect increases when you value yourself more? Your experience isn't just valuable to me, but to all women who are looking for a path toward more satisfying relationships. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss more content that will help you cultivate that self-love that generates so much respect. Thank you for being here, for listening, and above all, for being part of this community. Remember, you're not alone. The change in how men treat you begins with you, and the world needs more women who have the courage to choose themselves first. See you in the next video. And never forget that the deepest, most respectful and nurturing relationships begin the moment you decide that you deserve nothing less than that.